Success isn't random. In the vast complexity of human achievement, from Wall Street to Silicon Valley, from politics to warfare, a single mathematical formula silently governs who rises and who falls. It's been hiding in plain sight for decades, misunderstood or deliberately ignored because its implications are too unsettling for most to accept. What if I told you that mathematicians discovered the universal law of success and failure, and it's not what anyone expected? The answer isn't found in psychology books or self-help seminars. It's written in the cold, precise language of evolutionary mathematics, Price's equation. Before we continue, if you enjoy unraveling hidden truths and uncovering the forces that shape our world, make sure to click that subscribe button. Your support allows us to continue bringing you the insights that truly challenge how we think. Now let's go deeper. In 1970, an eccentric American mathematician named George Price formulated an equation that would become one of the most powerful tools in evolutionary biology. What makes this equation so revolutionary isn't just its mathematical elegance. It's that it explains far more than just biological evolution. It reveals the hidden mathematics behind all competitive systems, including human success and failure. Price's equation looks deceptively simple. Vous êtes rovnache COV, plus A, vous êtes. But within this compact formula lies a profound truth about how selection operates in any system, from genes to businesses, from social movements to civilizations. Let's break it down. At its core, Price's equation tells us that change in any population comes from two forces: selection and transformation. Selection favors certain traits over others, while transformation changes the traits themselves. Every success story in history, every rise and fall, can be mapped to these two fundamental processes. The first part of the equation, COV-WZ, represents the covariance between fitness and traits. In simpler terms, it measures how strongly a trait correlates with success in a given environment. The second part, EW-delta-Z, captures how traits themselves transform within individuals over time. Together, they explain not just why certain traits succeed, but how those traits themselves evolve under selection pressure. Consider a simple example. Two companies compete in the same market. Company A has a culture of innovation, constantly developing new products. Company B focuses on perfecting existing products. If the market suddenly shifts toward novelty, Company A thrives while Company B struggles. This is selection at work. The environment selects the traits that succeed. But there's more to the story. What if Company B recognizes this shift and transforms itself, adopting a culture of innovation? This is the transformation component of Price's equation, the capacity to change your traits in response to selection pressures. The mathematics tells us that this transformation can sometimes overcome selection disadvantages, allowing entities to succeed even when the initial environment doesn't favor them. Price didn't develop this equation in isolation. He built upon the work of R.A. Fisher and other population geneticists, but his insight was to create a general mathematical framework that could be applied to any evolving system. Initially focused on explaining altruism in evolution, a puzzle that had confounded Darwin himself, Price realized he had discovered something far more universal. The mathematics tells us something profound. Success isn't about being the strongest, the smartest, or even the most ethical. It's about having the traits that are selected for in your particular environment, and the ability to transform when that environment changes. This explains one of the most disturbing patterns in human affairs. Why sometimes people we consider unethical or undeserving rise to positions of tremendous power and influence. It's not that the world rewards evil. It's that certain environments select for traits we may find morally questionable. In times of stability and abundance, cooperation and fairness tend to be selected for. But in environments marked by scarcity, competition, and rapid change, traits like ruthlessness, risk-taking, and deception often provide competitive advantages. Price's equation doesn't make moral judgments. It simply describes the mathematical reality of selection. Look at Wall Street in the years leading up to the 2008 financial crisis. The environment selected for short-term risk-taking over long-term stability. Those who maximized immediate profits thrived, while those who exercised caution fell behind. The system wasn't rewarding evil. It was selecting for traits that eventually led to catastrophe. But Price's equation also explains why such systems eventually collapse. When selection pressures favor traits that undermine the overall system, transformation must occur, or the entire system fails. After the financial crisis, regulations changed, transforming the environment to select for different traits. The equation reveals another crucial insight. Selection doesn't just operate on individuals, but on groups as well. When traits that benefit individuals harm the group, the entire group may fail in competition with other groups. This multi-level selection creates a complex dynamic where what succeeds in the short term may fail in the long term. This pattern repeats throughout history. The Roman Empire initially selected for military prowess and administrative efficiency, leading to unprecedented expansion. But as it grew, the selection pressures changed, favoring political manipulation and corruption. The empire didn't transform quickly enough, and it collapsed. The mathematics of Price's equation reveals something even more profound. In any system, there's a constant tension between individual success and group success. Traits that help an individual succeed within a group can sometimes harm the group as a whole. This is the mathematical basis of the tragedy of the commons. When individuals pursuing their self-interest collectively destroy the shared resources they depend on. Consider a company where the highest performers are those who take credit for others' work. In the short term, these individuals may be promoted and rewarded. But over time, this selection pressure destroys collaboration, innovation, and ultimately the company itself. Price's equation predicts exactly this pattern. When selection favors traits that undermine the system eventually collapses. This insight gives us a new lens to understand why good people often finish last in certain environments. When a system selects primarily for individual advantage without regard for collective welfare, those who consider the greater good place themselves at a competitive disadvantage. The mathematics is brutal and unforgiving, but here's where it gets interesting. Price's equation also shows us that multi-level selection is possible. Selection can occur not just between individuals, but between groups. Groups that develop mechanisms to align individual success with collective success outcompete groups that don't. This is why companies with strong, collaborative cultures often outperform those driven by internal competition alone. The equation also helps explain the evolution of cooperation, one of the most powerful forces in human progress. When groups develop mechanisms that align individual incentives with group welfare, they create an environment that selects for cooperation rather than exploitation. This explains the rise of institutions, laws, and social norms that make modern civilization possible. What Price discovered, and what drove him to despair, was that selection is neither moral nor immoral. It simply is. The equation describes the cold mathematics of change, regardless of human values or desires. But understanding this mathematics gives us power. If we can recognize the selection pressures in our environment, we can either adapt to them or work to transform the environment itself. Consider the modern attention economy. Social media platforms select for content that maximizes engagement, often favoring outrage, controversy, and sensationalism over nuance, accuracy, and depth. Those who understand this selection pressure can either adapt to it, creating provocative content, or work to transform it, building alternative platforms with different incentive structures. Price's equation also reveals why disruption is so common in business and technology. Established organizations optimize for the current selection environment, developing traits that maximize success under existing conditions. But when the environment changes, due to technological breakthroughs, regulatory shifts, or cultural transformations, these same traits become liabilities. New entrants, unburdened by these adaptations to the old environment, can more readily develop traits suited to the new conditions. This explains why industry leaders often fail to adapt to technological revolutions. Kodak optimized for excellence in film photography, developing traits, organizational structures, expertise, investment patterns that succeeded brilliantly in that environment. When digital photography emerged, creating a new selection environment, these same traits prevented effective transformation. The mathematics of Price's equation predicted this outcome with cold precision. The most successful people in history understood Price's equation intuitively, even if they couldn't express it mathematically. They recognized the selection pressures in their environment and either adapted their traits accordingly or worked to transform the environment to select for the traits they already possessed. Napoleon Bonaparte rose to power during the chaos following the French Revolution, an environment that selected for military genius, charisma, and decisive action. When the environment later changed, selecting for diplomatic skill and moderation, he failed to transform and was ultimately defeated. Steve Jobs initially failed at Apple when the computer industry selected for business acumen and corporate stability, but he transformed himself, developing these traits while preserving his design vision. When he returned to Apple, he created an environment within the company that selected for innovation and perfectionism, transforming the entire technology industry in the process. Warren Buffett's investment philosophy can be understood through Price's equation as well. He identifies companies with traits that will be selected for over the long term, rather than those momentarily favored by market conditions. His famous advice to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful is essentially a strategy to exploit the transformation component of Price's equation, anticipating how selection pressures will change and positioning accordingly. But here's the most unsettling implication of Price's equation. There is no universal formula for success. The traits that lead to success in one environment may lead to failure in another. The equation doesn't tell us what traits will be selected for, only that selection will occur based on the environment's specific pressures. This explains why conventional wisdom about success often fails. We study successful people and try to imitate their traits, not realizing that those traits succeeded because of a specific selection environment that may no longer exist. By the time the pattern is recognized, the environment has often changed, selecting for entirely different traits. Consider the tech industry. In the early days of Silicon Valley, the environment selected for technical brilliance and product innovation above all else. As the industry matured, selection pressures shifted to favor business model innovation, scalability, and network effects. Many technically brilliant founders failed to transform and were replaced by CEOs with different trait sets. The pattern continues today, with new selection pressures emerging around privacy, security, and ethical considerations. The equation also illuminates why certain societies thrive while others stagnate. Societies that create selection environments favoring innovation, cooperation, and adaptation tend to outcompete those that select for conformity, exploitation, and rigidity. But even successful societies can fail if they don't transform as global conditions change. The rise and fall of civilizations follows the mathematical logic of Price's equation with remarkable consistency. So if success isn't about universal principles or inherent virtue, what hope do we have? This brings us to the most profound insight from Price's equation: the power of transformation. The equation tells us that change comes not just from selection but from transformation, the capacity to adapt traits in response to selection pressures. Humans, unlike any other species, have unprecedented power to transform both themselves and their environments. We can learn new skills, develop new habits, and even change our personalities. We can also create systems, cultures, and institutions that alter the selection pressures around us. This is the ultimate secret of sustained success, not just adapting to selection pressures, but understanding them deeply enough to transform them. The truly revolutionary leaders in history didn't just excel within existing systems. They created new ones with different selection dynamics. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't simply adapt to the selection pressures of a segregated America. He worked to transform those pressures through nonviolent resistance and moral persuasion. By changing what traits were selected for in the political environment, he altered the course of history. Elon Musk didn't just build better electric cars. He transformed the automotive industry's selection environment by changing consumer expectations, regulatory incentives, and technological possibilities. Tesla's success came not just from adapting to the existing market, but from fundamentally changing what traits would be selected for in that market. The most enduring human institutions, from religions to democracies, work by creating selection environments that channel individual ambition toward collective benefit. They transform the fundamental mathematics of success, creating systems where cooperation, integrity, and service are selected for rather than exploitation, deception, and domination. So here's the revelation that changes everything. Price's equation isn't just describing our reality. It's giving us the mathematical framework to redesign it. By understanding the selection pressures that shape success and failure, we can create environments that select for the traits we collectively value: cooperation, innovation, fairness, and sustainability. But this requires something rare: the willingness to look beyond individual success to the selection dynamics of the whole system. It means asking not just, how can I succeed in this environment, but what kind of environment would select for the best in humanity? The answer to that question might be the most important contribution any of us can make. By designing better selection environments in our families, companies, communities, and societies, we can ensure that the traits that lead to individual success also contribute to collective flourishing. This insight transforms how we approach everything from education to economic policy, from organizational design to environmental sustainability. Instead of merely incentivizing desired behaviors, we can create systems where the path of least resistance leads naturally to positive outcomes, where what's easy and what's right are one and the same. George Price himself struggled with the implications of his own equation. After deriving this cold, mathematical explanation for the evolution of both altruism and selfishness, he was driven to an extreme moral crisis. He gave away all his possessions to homeless people in London and eventually took his own life. A tragic end for the man who discovered the mathematical foundation of success and failure. The equation lives on, continuing to reveal its insights across disciplines, from biology to economics, from psychology to political science. It reminds us that success isn't a moral virtue in itself, but the outcome of a mathematical process of selection and transformation. The greatest irony may be that Price himself failed to apply the transformative insights of his own equation. Instead of seeing its implications as an opportunity to consciously redesign selection environments, he was overwhelmed by the seeming determinism of the selection component. His story serves as both warning and inspiration, a reminder that understanding the mathematics of success means nothing if we can't apply that understanding to transform ourselves and our world. So where does this leave us? With a choice, we can remain blind to these selection dynamics, accepting whatever definition of success our current environment selects for, or we can become conscious architects of selection, creating environments in our companies, communities, and societies that select for the traits we truly value. The mathematics of success doesn't care about our moral judgments, that we do, and understanding Price's equation gives us the power to align the mathematics of selection with our highest aspirations for humanity. What environments are you operating in, and what traits are they selecting for? How well do those traits align with your values and long-term goals? What transformations in yourself or your environment might create better alignments? And most importantly, how might you help design selection environments that bring out the best in everyone, not just the few? The answers to these questions might not just change your definition of success, they might change the world. Because when we understand the mathematics of who wins and who fails, we gain the power to rewrite the rules of the game itself. If this exploration of success and evolutionary mathematics has made you think, challenged your assumptions, and sparked a deeper curiosity about the forces that shape our world, then make sure to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with those who need to understand the hidden mathematics behind who wins and who fails in life's endless competition. Because once you see the equation, you can never unsee it again.